But what else do the wisdom traditions of the world offer us? Well, they can give us guidelines for the instantiation of relational modes of sense-making to contribute to the coherency of messages obtained by the use of psychedelics, such that they then afford wisdom instead of illusion. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if we look at something like Mudras, for example, what are those doing? As we meditate on holding our hands in particular kinds of ways and the ideas that come with them, we provide an embodied context cue for particular ideas that mean when we later, after instantiating the relationship, this association between position and state of mind, we can re-access those states of mind more readily by providing the context cue of that embodied posture. And so if you're going through a system of learning yoga, for example, or meditation that uses mudras, you can enhance your capacity to kind of catapult into the states that these sorts of mudras indicate. Because you become very, very sensitive to context within the psychedelic state. You become very sensitive to very minor perturbations in environment. And this can be one of them, especially if you've done the practice ahead of time of instantiating these relations in your body, right? And the way that neurons learn is fundamentally relational. Things that fire together wire together. That's the classic saying. And you can really initiate a very fine-grained kind of control over that. For example, there was a study done by, I think her name was Cecilia Hayes? I forget. That might be it. She wrote a book called Cognitive Gadgets. And she did an experiment which showed how easy it is for mirror neurons to relearn and how association is the fundamental mechanism on which mirror neurons will learn. And so she had a person, they tied electrodes to the hands of one person, and they had them watch a person like moving their index finger. And they found that there was a slight electrical impulse that would cascade on the same finger in the person that was watching the behavior being performed. But if you go through a series of training and you get, for example, that person to move their pinky finger as they're watching a person move their index finger, then when you redo the experiment and measure the electrical impulses as they're only watching, then that transforms and now their pinky finger initiates the electrical impulse. So you can very quickly change and contribute to the learning of these associational, relational systems in your body. And this is one of the ways you can do it. I thought I added a picture here of the chakra system, but that's also a really powerful way that you can do that. So the chakra system is kind of built off of these places that we generally tend to have feelings in our bodies, right? And we begin just by having these very murky sort of intimations of feelings. We're not really sure where they are or what they are. But as we concentrate on a system of concrete orbs in particular areas along our spine, which of course is integrating information from our body and sending it up to our brain, we're creating a much clearer system to be able to interpret our emotions by instantiating this system of relations in our cognition. It makes more clear our access to interoceptive states and emotional states. And it's not something that's pre-given, it's not an innate thing, but it's a thing that we can learn into ourselves to make clearer our understandings of our bodies and our emotions. And so all of that can interact really profoundly if you also integrate psychedelics into your process of learning and cultivating these ways of operating your body. Oh, yes, I did put it here. Okay, there it is. Right, of course I put it here. So wisdom traditions also offer these structures through which to scaffold interpretation and insight. Rituals, words, and movements can facilitate insights and interventions into the self. And as a part of intellectual humility, the magician, for example, knows that the world is incomprehensible. He knows that he doesn't really know what he's talking about. But he does know that if he uses symbols and if he works his mind and body in a particular kind of way, that he can massively expand his power over himself. So it's not really about admitting to the ontological truth of these things. We don't need to say that demons literally exist. We don't even need to say that God literally exists. To admit to the fact that when we interface these concepts and ways of being with our cognition, they can promote massive transformations. And perhaps they are more appropriate as ways to think than just focusing on logical analysis, because these kinds of ways of being, of this sort of ritualistic, embodied, intuitive kind of way of existing, can help us hone our approach to the world, right? The problem with the analytical reductive scientific view is that it annihilates all meaning. There's the problem of infinite interpretations. What of all possible things is correct? It doesn't really give us a value system. There's this all-pervasive thing called the meaning crisis that people like to talk about because there's no pre-given meaning within the worldviews that we have. How do we solve that problem? Well, maybe it's by taking a more playful approach to reality. Yeah?